Yeah, just want to start by saying that we obviously appreciate Bob's contributions here the last two seasons in San Diego, and we wish him the best in San Francisco. I think from my conversations with Bob over the last few weeks, and I think clearly watching him today, I think we understood it was a unique opportunity in San Fran for him to go back home, and the one job that definitely appealed to him outside of San Diego. So I think for us as an organization, our attention really switches forward to hiring a manager, and I think we're super excited about the process. We know we've got a really talented roster and some great players, and our attention shifts as soon as today to go finding a manager that we feel like is going to connect with those players, shares the passion and thirst that our fan base has to bring in a championship here to San Diego. Somebody that has a shared vision with the different departments of our organization, and honestly, somebody that when we look up here at the end of the year, we're back playing in October, and that pursuit starts today, and we're looking forward to getting started on that.
All right. Thank you, AJ. We'll go ahead and start with your questions, and we'll begin with Kevin Acey from the San Diego Union Tribune.
AJ, I'm wondering how much you think this was best for all involved, that there could be a clean slate, both for the Padres and for Bob?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, I think when we got to the end of the season and we had a chance to talk there, right after the season ended, and then, really in the last couple of weeks, I've sat down with Bob since then. And, I think really the way the process worked too, I think Bob, after that first meeting, he expressed to me that, hey, how would we handle if a team called and asked permission? And I explained to him, and, that we'd kind of cross that bridge when it came. And then, in the last few days when it was the Giants, I think he just explained that was a job that at least he wanted to listen on. And, I think for us, like, we felt like, there clearly was a path forward, that we have a good group and could have success. But again, I think this gives us an opportunity to really start focusing on adding a manager that, from our standpoint, fits what we're trying to do, fits our team, our clubhouse, and, somebody that's going to help lead this club here going forward.
How much of a priority will that be, and kind of what might you do maybe differently to make sure that it is a manager that you align with and that, meets the qualifications you're looking for?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been through the process a few times here, and I think every time you go through any process, you gain experience, the ability, what you're looking for, different questions you're asking, how you're vetting different guys out. And I think we'll have some some good knowledge and experience as we go to this one. But each situation is different, honestly. I can look back, Andy Green, for example. When you look at the rosters and you look, what we asked him to do, which is more of a rebuild situation. And get us back to a spot where we feel like we can be a competitive team. It's hard to judge him from the win-loss standpoint. The last two managers with Jason and Bob, it's been more about winning. And obviously with both of those managers, we've gotten to the playoffs and won some playoff series. And I would expect the next manager to do the same. But each situation is different. I think we're in a little different spot now than we were 5 or 6 years ago, and I think this search process will reflect that.
AJ, I know you're looking ahead, but I'm wondering if you can just kind of sum up why do you feel like it didn't work with Bob here, given that, I mean, he is leaving for a division rival with a year left on his contract. Like, why, in your opinion, did it not work with Bob here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, again, like I know this year was, we didn't meet our expectations, so I understand that for sure. I think we definitely look back on last year with a lot of fond memories and getting to the LCS. So kind of like judging how much did it work, how much didn't in 2 years. We get into the playoffs one and then falling short the other. I do know for talking to Bob, I know it was definitely, it was different, like from Oakland. I think he got used to the situation there in Oakland, and, coming here and just different roster, players with some from a contract situation was different. I think he talked about it today. Obviously, we've got, I think with Oakland, a smaller shop. I think some of those things, you kind of look back on, and from my own standpoint, did I make it easier? How can I do it a little bit different to make sure that the manager feels comfortable? And, again, there's, we've got different departments here that contribute to winning, and making sure that everybody's on the same page and communicating. That's probably my biggest job. And, I think as we go forward to the next manager, we've got to make sure we have somebody that, from that standpoint, wanting the best information, wanting to use our resources as an organization, and myself kind of over the top trying to coordinate it all. I think that's something I've got to really focus on to make sure we nail that. And we did at different points in the last couple of years, but, I think as Bob alluded to here, I think he felt it was a little better fit, and I think we've got to find a manager that fits our group and our organization right now.
How do you anticipate the manager search going? Do you expect it to be relatively quick? And I know there have been a few internal candidates mentioned already. What do you anticipate from that front?
Yeah, I think we have some some candidates that we're going to sit down with here starting as soon as today. Honestly, that we feel strongly about that are really well qualified, and we have some other candidates in the organization that we're going to talk to engage their interest level. I can just tell in the first 24 hours though, there's a lot of interest in this job. We've had some very interesting names and some people that are very accomplished that have expressed interest in this job. And I think really it's a testament to our team, our roster, the talent that's here, the fact that we've gone to the playoffs, a couple of times here in the last few years in our city. We've got amazing fans that support this team. So it's an attractive job. I think we'll sit down with some internal candidates the next few days, but we're going to make sure, we exhaust all the different possibilities, to get the right choice. It's no real time frame. It's not like, hey, we need to do this by this time. It's a big off season for us. We've got a lot of decisions to make. This is the first one, and we want to try to get it right.
Jake from CBS.
AJ, how much of a result of what happened took place because of the relationship with Bob in the front office? Because if this was a place that you guys wanted Bob to stay, why was he allowed to interview with the division rival?
Yeah, I think the way we looked at it when I sat down with Peter and ownership and Eric, I think what we looked at was basically like this is an opportunity for Bob. I think we were on the other end of it a few years ago. I think it's not unprecedented. 2 years ago, we reached out to Oakland, in a similar spot, like understanding that Bob's from that area and everything like that. But we had an opportunity that we at least wanted to see how it played out, and we're granted permission at that time to talk. I think from this standpoint, really out of respect for Bob, what he's done, and kind of throughout the organization. This is the way we've operated for the most part over the last 9 years or so since I've been here. Is if a team calls and asks for permission, we feel like it's in the best interest of everybody to at least let the employee know, hey, this is what's out there. And I think from Bob's standpoint, he was pretty open that that was the one job, at least when the Giants called, that at least he had to listen. So those were the factors that went in. I sat down and again talking with and visiting with Peter and the group, like making sure that everybody's on the same page from that standpoint. We decided to let him interview.
Was there any sort of seismic shift between earlier in the month when you and Bob both came out and said, hey, Bob is coming back as our manager, to Sunday when he was allowed to interview? I feel like maybe some fans felt lied to, maybe not lied to, or misled that yes, he was coming back, and then all of a sudden Sunday rolled around and now he's interviewing for another job.
No, I think my intention the whole time was that we were gonna move forward with Bob, and I think even as recently as last week in Arizona, sat down with Bob for a few hours and went through the coaching staff and the roster and different situations, what we needed to accomplish here this off season. So I think from our standpoint, again, I think everybody pretty straightforward, and as the Giants called and asked permission, we made the decision to go present it to Bob, and fully understanding that if he didn't want to take it, we were excited about him being our manager going forward. So no, I don't think anything from that standpoint.
And then final one, and thank you for the time. The not getting any compensation back from the Giants, is that something that was agreed upon, or how come that didn't take place?
Yeah, I think just ultimately, we decided that, I think again, looking at being Bob's decision and what he's done in the game, I didn't really want to cloud the process and kind of get involved in arguing over a player or anything like that. I think it was more about, what's right. We ultimately decided hey, giving him the ability to at least hear and make a decision whether he wanted to go interview and then hear what the Giants had to say. I think we felt like that was the right thing to do. A couple of years ago, we didn't have to put compensation in to get him here. And I think we ultimately decided that, I think in this process, we weren't going to ask for anything on the way back. So.
Next up, we'll go Bernie Wilson, AP.
Hey, Jay. The new guy is going to be your fifth managerial hire in less than 9 years, not counting a couple of the interim guys who did a game or 9 games or whatever. Why the high burn rate with your managerial hires?
Yeah, I think again, I think it's the fourth hire. This will be the fourth hire that we've made.
I'm including Murph. I mean, he was about a half of a season, and then Grandy, then Ting, and then Bob.
Yeah, I think looking at it again, I kind of focus as far as with with Andy and now Jason, Bob. No, I mean, again, I think that the idea is you want somebody that's here for a long time, and you want to find talented people that are here for a long time. But again, it's like anything. It's like, you look at any kind of partnership, it takes two. I think again, like I'll constantly look back and say, hey, how can we do this different, and what does it look like? Because you want to hire a really talented person, and hopefully they're here for a decade. But sometimes like things come up. They're different rosters, different situations, maybe different opportunities that people are excited about. We've had other people leave the organization because they want to go they want a new opportunity. They want a different challenge. They want to be closer to home. But I think from my standpoint, it's like, look, we want to make sure we have an environment that the employees feel good about working in, and at the end of the day, putting a situation together on this next hire where hopefully we look up and this is somebody that's here for a decade. That's the goal.
Do you get a sense from Peter at all, any disappointment that the fracture between you and Bob was so acute that you couldn't find common ground, at least on a professional level?
No, I mean, again, I think from Peter's standpoint, I think the indication was he had a lot of faith in both me and Bob, and I don't really think anything changed in that way over the last few weeks or anything like that. I think, again, this opportunity, it sounds like for Bob was a unique one and something he felt he needed to explore. And I think he said it today. That's the one job he wanted to at least hear, or at least growing up in that area, et cetera. So I think from my standpoint, like we were fully prepared, go out and have a big year and have a really good off season. And obviously now we're going to be doing that, searching for a manager as well.
Last thing from me, why should the person who is at least partially responsible for the obvious organizational dysfunction be the one who is asked to fix it?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think obviously that's my job, as far as being the general manager and overseeing the team. So I think from our standpoint, what I'm trying to do is you go hire good people. I think our environment, at least the way, at least the way I work, it's very open, it's very collaborative. We're looking for we feel like we have a lot of really talented people in the organization, and then for myself, trying to get everybody on the same page. And obviously the last couple of years we didn't quite get that right. So we've had different periods over the last few years where we have. But yeah, I think as far as being the GM and the president, it's a big part of my role and responsibility. And I'm going to look back at the last couple of years. There's different points in time, and you learn from it. I think in 20, honestly, like I think in 20, like there was a lot of communication. It's probably the year that personally I was the most active and involved in the big league team, and it was because of COVID. There really wasn't anything else to do, and everybody was locked in. It was a very unique time. I feel like our group played well, and the biggest thing was because there was communication constantly between players, staff, and and myself, training staff and R&D, et cetera. In 21, I probably felt like a little bit where, I kind of thought maybe we had it. And I think, probably didn't communicate as well in the last 2 years. I think kind of out of respect for, for Bob and different things. I think probably like that constant communication, I think is something that, we'll make sure that we get right here this year. And similar to 20 year where we played well, I think, something that personally for myself, you're asked to wear a lot of hats as the GM. I think making sure this big league team is right this year, that'll be a big goal.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Bernie.
Hey, AJ, you were the one who reached out to Billy Beane a couple of years ago, but whose call was it? Final call between you and Peter to hire Bob back then?
It was my call. Yeah, I think, that was, we throw a lot of different ideas out there. And, I think that was an idea that I threw out to Peter and the group was, at the time, I don't think anybody's really thinking about Bob, but, from afar, I didn't know Bob at the time, but from afar had a ton of respect for him and what he had done and accomplished in Oakland. And just kind of looking at the situation there, I thought maybe it was ripe for Bob to want to leave. So I think it was more of just a random idea that I presented to the group and to Peter, and ultimately Peter was supportive of it, and we were able to get Bob down here.
And is it your understanding it'll be the same thing this time around? This will be your call on the manager, even though the last several haven't worked out for you?
Yeah, it's always an organizational decision. I mean, this is Peter's organization, and I think the way we work it, Eric runs the business side, and myself on the baseball side. Peter's incredibly supportive of that, and he hires really good people and lets them do their job. That's his business model. But again, this is a big decision, and I'll make sure at the end of the day, obviously, Peter weighs in, and but ultimately, I'll be presenting to him, and he'll make the final call along with myself.
Last thing, I know you mentioned that last couple of years you maybe weren't as involved as you would have liked, or in hindsight would have hoped. But there have been a lot of suggestions. I know you don't put stock, as you said, into anonymous reports, but these things are said over and over that there seems to be, in some cases, a lack of hierarchy in the organization. That even if you're not there in person, seems like you're involved in a lot of things. What is your response to that? And if you think there's any validity to that, do you plan to change anything?
I mean, I think as the GM, like you've got a farm system. It's not just the big league team. So like you've got scouting, you've got the farm system. A lot of different departments that ultimately report up to yourself. But yeah, I think the focus, like I said, I think the biggest thing I was trying to say is go a lot of different ways in terms of time management and what you try to do. The key is just making sure there's good communication between the different departments and the different groups. And I feel like going back to that 20 season, I think it was pretty clear, hey, the focus on the big league team and the involvement and kind of what that dynamic looks like, because it takes a lot of people to get this, to at least give the resources to the group to try to put us in the best possible position, to go win. And ultimately, the biggest thing is we have really good players, and I think, because of that, we're always going to have a chance every single year. We've got a talented roster, and I will, I think, again, from making sure that, the communication and the process systems are in place to give the players a chance to play their best and make sure they're getting the best information. That'll be a big focus for me here this year.
Next, we'll go to Marty Caswell, Sports 760.
Hi, AJ. Bob spoke today about a narrative that was around the team towards the end of the season that wasn't going to go away, and it was just time for both sides to move on. Can you speak to that narrative? And is there a sense of relief for you that you can find a guy that aligns more with you and your front office going forward?
No, I mean, again, I think, I guess the narrative is kind of this disconnect, I guess he's saying. But no, I mean, I think from my standpoint, we got to the end of the season, and we've had, like I said, we've had some success here in the last couple of years also. And we have, so I think for myself and others in the organization, we've really prepared to move forward, with Bob as the manager. And, I think really what we're looking at is, again, you're always excited when you get a chance to add somebody talented to the organization, especially, I think we feel like we have a good group. So I think, from a player standpoint, so, I think the attention really just goes to, getting the right manager, getting somebody in here that, is going to be able to work with the players. And I think the shared vision is an important thing. I think that's something we got to make sure. And that doesn't mean hey, somebody that's just, I've seen it written in the past, a yes man or something. We don't do that in any part of the organization. All of our conversations start with speak your opinion, say what you feel. And I think we get pissed in meetings is when, you don't say what you feel and then you walk out the room and maybe say something different. So we try to encourage that throughout in every conversation we have. And I think we're looking for people that want to come in and bring ideas. And then when we agree, we go out and agree and go forward and test it out and see how things work. So I think we're excited to have somebody that, that has that shared vision, that's willing to kind of disagree and then commit. And ultimately, somebody that kind of views winning in the same way that a lot of people in this organization do, because we've got a lot of really good people and departments in this org.
And by all accounts, he was very well respected and liked by your players. What's been the reaction from the guys on the team?
Yeah, I think like most guys, I've talked to probably 6 or 7 players and try to touch base with others on the roster in the next few days. I think most guys' feeling is hey, they're looking for, again, I think they view this as a great situation. It's a great city. They love playing here. I think they feel really, really positive about the organization and the resources that are here. Obviously, Peter and our baseball ops team. And I think from our player standpoint, their response has been they're hungry to make sure that we get back to the playoffs next year. I think they know what we're capable of doing, and I think that's their focus, is go have a great off season. I think there's a trust there that we're going to hire a really good manager, and I think there's a belief for our players that I can feel that they're excited about the off season and getting this thing right, and getting back into postseason baseball. That's been the biggest thing I've heard from our guys.
And which coaches will Bob be allowed to bring with him to Oakland or San Francisco?
Yeah, I think that's something. Again, this just happened. So I talked about it a minute with him the other day and with Farhan. But I've sat down with, or at least I've talked on the phone with pretty much all the main coaches on the big league staff, and just indicated, kind of, hey, I appreciate you being patient with us, and we've got to go hire a manager. So that's going to be the first step. We've got some quality people under contract that I expect being here. And then we'll have a conversation about others. But there's a lot of people on the staff that we'd like back, and I explained that to pretty much all of the coaches that we had last year. But I think we all understand when you get a new manager, he's going to have a lot of say and different thoughts on what the staff looks like. So we've got to go down this process first, and then we'll get to the coaching staff after that.
And sorry, AJ, I'm sorry, you've mentioned Peter Seidler a couple of times during this Zoom. How involved has he been in the process, and how much communication interaction has he had with the front office during this time?
Yeah, no, he's involved. He's aware of everything that's going on, and again, he goes through his recovery. It's kind of again, like he relies on Eric on the business side and myself on the baseball side. So that's kind of business as usual on that end. And then when we need to have Peter up to date on different things, he'll weigh in and give his thoughts. And this situation was no different.
Back to Kevin Acee.
AJ, Bob today seemed to indicate, and really not for the first time, that maybe your analytics didn't provide all that that he would desire. What do you think about that? And can that get better? Can you change the way or the manner or the quality that you provide to your manager and coaches?
Yeah, we feel again like I didn't hear what he said or how he said it on that front. So I think just hearing specifics, we're again like we throughout our whole organization, analytics are a huge part of what we do. Every department away from our R&D team kind of embedded in that department. So we've done it at the minor league level. We've done it in amateur scouting, throughout the different areas of the organization. I think for us, like we feel really good about the group that we have. Adam Mascara runs the group. He's he came over from the Tampa Bay Rays. We don't try to publicize a lot of hey we're doing this or that on scouting or R&D, or player development, et cetera. Hopefully, usually the results speak for themselves, and that's kind of what we subscribe to. But we'll sit down with anybody. If a manager or coach or somebody, director of player development or a scouting director says, hey, we need more of this or less of that, you just want to get better, and ultimately you just want to have answers and hopefully have a competitive advantage with the information that's given. So again, I think if you talk to a lot of people in the organization, they would speak highly of the group we have and the information that's going throughout, and it's part of every decision we make. But again, if there's some conversation and thoughts that we can learn from, and anybody has some more specific examples, we're going to do it. And that's the kind of group we have. Cody Zupnik, Adam, Ascare, they're very open-minded and willing to work with anybody in our organization.
Next, we'll go to Troy Hirsch, Fox 5.
AJ, not knowing what the president and general manager of a baseball team does, you mentioned that you didn't have as much focus on the big league club in the last couple of years as you should have. What took your focus off of the big league team?
If I said focus, probably the wrong word, because it's every night. Like you're locked in on your major league team. That's the most important thing, is that win and loss at the big league level. I just think in terms of like the day to day, being around, the communication, being present in terms of like just getting a lot of people on the same page. I think that's, again, I'm not saying that was non-existent here in the last few years, because that's not the case. But just again, making sure that everybody's on the same page and there's some big picture vision, and that there's that constant communication. And that's I think there's been times here over the last few years when we've done that. There's times I've kind of backed off and thought we had it, and I think probably the biggest learning is like you really never have it. It's just constant. And when you sit down at the end of the year and you get a chance to talk with our players or our coaches, it's just like, hey, just making sure next year that we're not going 3 weeks without sitting down and reviewing something. That kind of like that sense of urgency that we didn't quite have this year, and that 162 game season, how you navigate that, you really do it just by talking and communicating and getting the feedback from your group and your players and your staff, and they do a great job and providing that. I think just being very present for that and a part of that situation. You're not over the top like running it day to day. That's your manager and your staff, but just like kind of being part of that as the as the year goes on, a long season. I think that'll be a bigger part of my attention here this year.
You mentioned that you preferred not to comment on any reports or anything like that. So I'll just ask you straightforward. Was your relationship with Bob strained?
No, I think again, and we talk about it a lot. I don't think like there was a lot different in the 2 years, in terms of the working relationship or anything like that. I know personally, he'll talk about just like I will. We like each other and everything there. But I don't. It wasn't like the last 2 months were strained, and I think overall, again, there were some adjustments that Bob had to make coming from Oakland. There were adjustments that I had to make, with a new manager, and I didn't feel like, hey, it was more strained at the end than it was a couple of years ago or anything like that. I think these were just, as we went through the process the last 2 years, like any relationship, there were things you liked, there were things that we felt we could have done better. We had, ultimately result wise, we played deep into the postseason last year, so I think people would view that as a success and we didn't get it done this year. I think our focus is on, let's go get a manager, let's go get better this offseason. We've got a lot of decisions, free agents, and trying to improve the roster. That's kind of the next steps for us.
And then finally, you mentioned that you wanted somebody that could be here for 10 years. You haven't had a manager that's been here longer than 3 years. And I know things change and so forth, but is there some adaptiveness that you in the front office maybe need to do as well down the line to maintain these managers and retain them? Because on the surface, Bob took you to the LCS. He had a winning record last year, although missed out on the postseason. He's the only manager you've had with winning records in his 2 seasons. And so I'm wondering if there's some internal looking that's going to be done and ways that you're changing and the front office might be changing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think, like I mentioned a few times here, I think it'll be a big part of the next couple of weeks and months. But it's something again, a big part of it is you got to look back and reflect and review. And I think having a manager that wants to do that, and that's a healthy part of any season. I think that getting better process and understanding that just constantly talking about how you get better, continuous improvement. And not looking at that as a negative, but a positive. I think that's something that, myself, others in the organization, and the manager need to be on the same page with. Again, like we've had the last two managers, they've gotten to the playoffs, and I would expect, this year we're gonna put a team on the field that can get another manager, deep into October, and that manager will have a roster that he feels that he can lead, to a World Series championship. So that's, but that's kind of where we're at on that.
Thank you, AJ.
Appreciate it, Troy. Thanks.
We have time for a couple more questions. We'll go to Darnay Tripp, NBC.
Hey, Jay, thanks for your time. You've kind of hinted at it, but did it become apparent at some point that you and Bob didn't have a shared vision and that, there wasn't maybe an interest in using the resources and information the way that you guys had?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, that's like from our standpoint, I've had a lot of open conversations with Bob about, things that he sees and needs and what he was looking for. I think it definitely, like from my end, it wasn't about being closed off or anything like that. I think some of it is just some different thoughts on philosophy and, what it looks like. I think for us, I think Bob mentioned it today. I watched a little bit of the press release in the beginning part where, I think, the staffs are, it's bigger staffs and a lot of different resources. And I think for myself, it's about, using the staff, using those resources, and making sure the best idea wins out as we get going. And that could be from a hitting coach, that could be from an R&D person, that could be from a scout. That's, again, I think that's the way we try to work. Again, we'll look back and go, hey, what can we do different? What can we do better? How can we make sure the communication's better? I think that's all part of the process. How do we make sure that, the manager and staff has exactly what they need going forward and it's something they feel comfortable with? I think there were moments where, the last couple of years we got that right. There were moments we didn't. I think that's going to be a big part of this hiring process, the interview process, and then definitely, if we're going to get it right here going forward, I think that'll be a big part of it here as we move to the off season.
And knowing what the stakes could be for you personally, if this hire doesn't hit the way you need it to, how much more urgency is there for you on a personal level to nail this?
No, I mean, there's always urgency. I mean, it's Major League Baseball, and I think really since 20, I think that was kind of the game plan. Is every single year we want to have a team that can win a World Series, and if we were, I think from a roster standpoint, we think we have some guys, some players that are capable of playing on the big stage and taking this franchise to its first championship. So there's always that urgency. I think, there'll be urgency in the process this offseason about, wanting to get it right. And some, in a manager that has that passion and that fuel like our fans feel right now to go win a championship. And, I feel that. And so what gets you motivated every single day, that's gonna go into this hire and this process, but no different really than the last few years.
And sorry, one last one, following up on Marty's question about the coaching staff. Ruben Nieblo was hired before Bob Melvin. I believe he's still under contract. Do you expect a similar situation where he is kept on regardless of who the manager is?
Yeah, I think again, with Ruben, it was unique. We kind of identified Ruben, ties to the area, very good pitching coach, good content, and thought he was somebody that could be a big time asset for us leading our staff, and tried to lock him up before we went down this process. He's done a good job here the last few years with our staff, and I think we have a lot of other good coaches on the big league staff. So I think it'll be a conversation with the manager. It always is, kind of hearing their thoughts and their take. If they have other names they want to throw in the mix, we'll go there with them. But I think a lot of people in the industry understand we've got some really good coaches here and good staff. And I think from our standpoint, giving them opportunity and seeing it through, I think that's probably going to be the starting point for us. And we'll have conversation if it needs to change. So.